chapter 18, beginning at verse 9. Can I read? St. Luke chapter 18, beginning at verse 9, and somewhere this week in your quiet time, if you would, you might want to read the entire chapter. You might want to read the entire chapter. And he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. Two men went up into the temple to pray. The one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself: God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalted himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Thus, in the reading of God's holy word, I want to talk about how do you feel about you.
All right. Good question.
How do you feel about you? We often grade ourselves. But is it an honest grade? Or do we grade ourselves on the curve? Maybe I need to talk about that thing again. We often grade ourselves. But is it, talk to me, an honest grade? Or do we grade ourselves on the curve? This parable is about those who are self-righteous. Those who are self-righteous. They come to church. And want others to think that they all that. If the truth be told, this manorology, I don't like dealing with holy rollers. When I come to church, I want to come to church where some sinners are. We heard our testimony, we heard our witness if we grade ourselves too high.
You're right.
Somebody with their name on the church roll ought to embrace that old song that the lyric says, if I'm too high, bring me down. We are to grade ourselves, but you ought not give yourself a grade that you haven't earned.
All right. Fix it,
You ought not give yourself a grade that you don't deserve. And the Word of God teaches us, let a man examine himself. You ought to grade yourself, but you ought to be honest in your grading. Be careful that you don't puff yourself up, because there are some self-righteous folk at church. They walk up in here with their head up in the air, chest sticking out, and God is saying, don't be like a Pharisee. If the truth be told, all of us ought to be nervous when we come up in here. Look at the text. The text says these two men went up to the temple to pray, and you ought to be careful when you show up here, because out there you can act like you're something. And folk might not know, but whenever you show up to God's house, you can fool us, but you can't fool God. And be careful that while you're up in here, you don't give yourself a grade that you don't deserve. How do you feel? How do you feel about you? I mean, for real, how do you feel about you? Do you feel that you is on your way to heaven? How do you feel about you? You got to be careful. You got to be careful because this Pharisee has no problem in his prayer telling God how he feels about himself. And some of us have no problem with telling God and others, and possibly ourselves, how we feel about us. And so with that in mind, I see three things that I want to lift up. Three things I want to lift up, and I'm already feeling good. What about you?
All right.
Listen. Is there anything about you that makes you look good? I mean, for real. When looking at how do you feel about yourself, is there anything about you that makes you feel good about? Well, let's walk through the text. This man says he stood and prayed with himself. Yeah, that might be the problem right there. He prayed with himself. And listen to what he said. I thank thee that I'm not as other men. God Almighty. I thank thee that I'm not like other men. They are extortioners, unjust, adulterers, and even as this book, y'all gonna miss this thing. He's telling God that he thank God that he's not like other folk. But then he started naming folk. I thank God. I'm trying to figure out, for real, I'm trying to figure out, is there anything about you that makes you look good? I thank God I fast twice a week. It's right there in the text. It's right there in the text. He says, I give tithes of all that I possess. I'm feeling, Lord, I come to church every Sunday. I sing in the choir. I serve as an usher. I'm president of this. I'm president of that. Lord, every time the doors open up, I'm here. I preach. I'm a deacon. I'm just not any deacon. I'm the best deacon at St. Paul. Lord, I'm just wondering. I'm wondering, how do you look to yourself?
Right.
Is there anything about you that makes you look good? I ain't talking about your outfit.
Right.
And some of us are mistaken for making ourselves look better than what we really are.
Right.
Is there anybody up in here? Is it? What is it? What? You can say a few amens. Right? Is that what makes you look good? And you gotta be you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful because I remember, and I know I've shared it with you before. The late Sister Ruth Cooper, that was at my home church, watched me grow up from a little boy to a man.
Right.
And Sister Ruth Cooper only saw me on Sundays.
Yeah.
All right.
Sister Ruth Cooper says to me one Sunday, she says to me, she says, baby, I might not be here to see it,